Mark, thank you so much for taking the time today to be a part of our community of practice page here on YouTube. And on behalf of SETI, I want to thank you so much for your leadership today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. So, as always, we begin by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, if you can please do us the honors by introducing yourself to our listeners and viewers and tell us about your amazing work.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mott. And hello, everybody. My name is Mark Kennedy, and I'm calling you, we're speaking to you from, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from Mi'kmaq, which is the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I'm the founder and owner of Everbloom Homes, CIC. We're based out of Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. We're a community housing provider, and my background is pretty broadly diverse in terms of areas I've worked, but largely came from public sector as a project manager. But I've taken that and shifted more so in the housing space and started a property management company in Halifax in 2019. And that business has evolved quite significantly now, focusing purely on affordable housing, community housing, and financing solutions to support the community.
Wow, that's awesome. So needed. So needed in this time. So, what inspires you most about your current work?
Oh, there's so much. There's so much. And this being a community-based business, I work with the people firsthand every day. Those can be the residents, those can be the housing providers in the community, public sector, stakeholders. There's just so many people involved in housing. And given the situation we're in Canada right now, we really look at taking a very collaborative approach to this because there are so many people and players involved in this complex system. And that collaborative focus is really important in my day to day. But namely, really understanding community needs. Housing is really the basis of our lives, and we really look at homes as a fundamental piece within the philosophy of the business. We really lean on a philosophy called ecos, which is an ancient Greek philosophy that looks at homes really as that basis of society, which allows us to thrive and contribute to community and really healthy well-being in individual lives and families. So really thinking within in the context of the home is really what drives me every day and the impact that a good home provides for people. And that focus is really what drives me to interact with people on a day-to-day basis.
For sure. We have instability in the home and also food. I was just interviewing a farmer yesterday and explained the same thing, about the crisis of the lack of proper nutrition, even into our children. Yeah. So these are two basic human rights that need to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of it, again, comes back to the home as really being that fundamental unit for providing all those other supports, whether it's
That's it.
food security, income,
Right.
employment, the list goes on.
That's
And I
right.
really look at that as being that foundation for delivering impact in our communities.
Absolutely. So on that tip, actually, like what challenges or barriers have you faced in your work, and how have you overcome them, or at least in the process of overcoming them?
Great question. And just a little more background on myself. As a property manager, actually come from the private industry and largely started working as a service-based company, working with real estate investors. And here in Halifax, we're seeing some of the fastest growth we've seen in history in terms of population growth, industry growth, housing development, and really kind of taking a lot of that experience from the private industry, but now working within the community housing sector is really seeing a lot of the challenges within community housing, but taking a lot of that knowledge from the private sector. And one of the biggest challenges right now is around financing projects. And that's an area I've really focused on really how can we deliver innovative financing solutions to make an impact in our communities. And through my work, I've built a strong network with other community housing providers, and within the nonprofit sector, very much largely supported by public investments. And we've seen some of the strongest public investment here in Nova Scotia compared to other provinces in the country into our community housing sector. So very strong investment, but the way I view it is we need more money. We view the housing crisis as potentially a $2 to $4 trillion problem to restore affordability. That's a lot of money. So we look at it on a bigger scale and evaluate other areas where we can source capital. And our approach is leveraging public sector partners as we currently do, but also looking at other capital streams to help build on this to add additional capacity. So that is really looking at the private sector to see how we can attract those private dollars to support affordable housing, community housing sector as a whole, but also leaning on models that we're seeing across the world in places like the UK, Austria. There's a lot we can learn from other countries, and uh, the housing crisis didn't happen overnight. It took many, many decades to get here, and a lot of the reasoning for that is very much policy driven. So in addition to finance, the policy levers are very, very important as well to make this model successful. Again, leaning on what we're seeing in other countries in the world to support that investment. But ultimately, real estate, housing, homes cost a lot of money. So it comes down to how do we finance those dollars and get these projects off the ground so people can have the homes that they need.
Absolutely. That seems to be a general problem. Every person that I speak to also in that same sector is the same thing, is the funding to get the adequate
Yeah.
housing for people, you know. Um, yeah, so now let me ask you in general sense, how do you feel about the future of social impact with all this? How do you feel about the future in Canada?
I am so optimistic right now around the social impact space in Canada, and in full disclosure, I'm actually quite new to the impact sector. As I mentioned, I worked in the public sector for many years. I've worked in private sector as well through real estate consulting. And as I was exploring my business model, I kind of realized I'm a social entrepreneur and didn't realize it. Uh, so I delved into the social enterprise space about 3 years ago, and that started with attending a social enterprise summit here in Atlantic, Canada, to meet more people in the community in this area of work. And as soon as I walked through those doors, I knew this was the space for me. And from there, about 3 years ago, I've done a lot of research to understand social innovation, social impact, the sector as a whole in Canada, looking at models within the space around the world. The UK has been a huge influence for me around social finance and then how the impact sector works within housing, but more broadly, the sector as a whole. Um, and I think we're a little bit behind with respective to those European models, but the momentum is there. And my network has grown significantly since I entered the social enterprise space. And what I really love about the social impact space is the level of collaboration, and it's purpose driven. And really understanding purpose within business has really become a key driver for me on a day-to-day basis. And purpose feeds into your mission, into your strategy, how you operate, who you partner with. And that's really what's gaining a lot of momentum in Canada that I'm seeing right now is those purpose-driven social entrepreneurs across the space that are really taking this to a new level to really find opportunities to build capacity within our organizations, but build capacity across the sector as a whole. And again, coming back to that collaboration and working together to do that. Um, Profit is a part of our model, but it's not our driver. Our driver is social impact. We look at profit. We actually call it surplus in our case. And we look at that as a tool to reinvest back into community. It's a lever that we can use to build that capacity. And that's a mindset change I'm seeing across the country right now that I feel is in the very early stages, but I'm also very excited about the younger generation coming up. I'm kind of dating myself here. Perhaps my hairline is giving that away, my bald head, but really seeing a lot of the young folks coming out of post-secondary, even kids still in secondary school, the mindset is different, and they really think about society, environment, and how can we contribute, and how our actions really impact that on a day-to-day basis in community. So again, back to my first point, I'm very optimistic and I'm really excited to be a part of this sector in Canada.
That, that's awesome. And I think, we have to be in this sector because we are laying a foundation for the future. And I totally agree with you. I say it all the times in my interview about the youth and how they are very accountability based now.
Yeah,
What are we doing, for the betterment of them, for their future? And what didn't we do in order for them to have a more solid future? So I
absolutely.
totally agree, yeah, with that, and I'm very hopeful too. You have to be. You have you're grounded, and you have your sense of reality, but then sometimes you need that out. How do I say, like a higher wisdom, or that
Yeah,
positive outlook for future. Yeah,
absolutely. And you
that's
said the word,
that's
yeah.
Superman energy.
And you said a critical word there, and that's hope. And I think
Yeah,
hope is very important to maintain that optimism, but with
yeah,
hope also
that's it.
requires action.
There you
And
go.
that's very much our approach as well, as being very pragmatic,
Hmm.
leaning on those hopeful aspects and what we envision for a future in Canada.
That's it.
But how do we actually action that on a day-to-day basis to make it real and see results? But
Exactly.
really good word.
Awesome. So, let me ask you, like, what is your like, if you were to summarize everything we talked about, your ultimate goal, and what does success look like to you? What would you say?
Yeah, and then there's a couple of factors to that. So my organization, Everbloom Homes, is a community interest company, and CICs are very new to Canada. It's actually only in Nova Scotia at the moment, legislated in Nova Scotia under the Corporations Act. But the CIC actually originated in the UK back in 2004, so it's been operational in the UK for over 20 years. In the UK, there's now 36,000 CICs in operation, and CICs were developed in the UK as a new model for social enterprise. So it brings together aspects of the nonprofit sector and the private sector, merging those to provide a very agile way of working and delivering solutions for society. And it was introduced to Nova Scotia in 2016. And really, one of our biggest goals is to see this model available across the country. And here in Nova Scotia right now, we only have 25 CICs compared to that 36,000 in the UK. So, reason being is lack of awareness that this model is available. One in Nova Scotia, but really we need to see this across the country as a whole. But using this as a lever to deliver more affordable housing is really a big part of our strategy. Um, Through that, I want to see better measurement around the impact that we can make through our investments. And I think that's an area that's still in its early stages in Canada in terms of how we measure impact, how we manage that. And in a space such as this, which requires such significant capital investment, being able to communicate that impact back to investors is really important to us. So developing those systems and really being able to report that, not just financial returns, but what is that impact we're making in the community? What's the environmental impact we're making? And largely speaking, how does that support our economy, which is a big conversation in Canada now as well around productivity, economic stimulation, and really looking at how can we build on that community infrastructure to support those broader systems. So really understanding how we put metrics on this is going to be really important to the growth. That's how we measure our success and be able to communicate that to a broader audience.
That's it. Right now, we know that data is gold. Data is the new gold, right? So
Yeah,
everything is data focused, data centered, but the key is to have ownership to that data and to be responsible for it, and ethically, morally, have those numbers, and how we can improve it, and see how we can benefit community, because in the past it was hoarded. Data was
yeah,
always hoarded. Only the big guys had the data. But now we're seeing that no, it all needs to be honestly, and because we need to have an outcome to this data. We need to see, okay, these are the numbers, this is the problem, let's fix it.
that's
And
right. Yeah, I
yeah.
couldn't agree more.
Amazing. So anything you want to amplify before we close? Anything new that you wanted to bring forward, and what you're doing?
Absolutely. And we're just really getting off the ground with this model in Halifax. And again, as I mentioned, we're looking to scale this across Canada. And we're very grateful. We just received funding from the Canadian Housing and Mortgage Corporation, which is the federal housing authority, to develop the prototype. And as mentioned, this structure is very new to Canada. So there's a lot of opportunity and strengths behind this. And this funding now has allowed us to bring together a very, very strong team that covers off finance, policy, uh, legal in terms of corporate law, securities law, tax law. So a lot of complex aspects, but we also have a strong core piece of our team that represents the community sector, whether that's housing, community services. So really bringing that community voice to the table as well as we develop this prototype. And we are now preparing to launch this actually next week. So very soon, we're bringing the team together to kick off the project. And with that, we'll be starting a lot more communications on our webpage, everbloomhomes.ca, as well as our LinkedIn page as well. So this is going to be a co-creative process through a solutions lab. So very, very well structured process. We're working with Enfin Impact with Ilya Velji, who's leading that process and brings a lot of experience in housing, finance, and the social sector and policies. So we're really excited about the team and getting this project off the ground and showcasing this to the country in the coming months. So I certainly encourage people to stay tuned to our social media and our website as we share more information in the coming months.
That's awesome. That is amazing. We thank you for your leadership with that. So tell you what, let's close off. Give us your closing thoughts, your wise wisdom, and your calls to action as we close.
Wonderful. And I'm going to lean back on my points earlier around collaboration. I think collaboration really is the key to the future. And really coming from a business background, and you mentioned as well around data, we often hoard data. And business is very much like that. It's very closed and not very much open to sharing in some cases. But the social impact space, the social sector, is very much collaborative and open to sharing information. I really want to encourage folks out there as you really look at the problems in society and what's impacting our lives, and as we develop solutions through innovation and see tangible results, it's important to really broadcast that and share your successes, what works, what does not, and we all bring different things to the table through our different experience and skills and so on. So it's really rooted on collaboration. And with that, I welcome anybody to reach out if they want to learn more and see how we can potentially work together.
That's perfect. You know, now that the elections are done, everything, I say, you know what? Left wing, right wing, same bird. Let's all just come together. We are,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, we are that bird, but we need to get fed. We need to be nourished. We need to be able to, reproduce what we're doing. If we look at it that way and be like, at the end of the day, whether red or blue, it doesn't matter. We're still human beings. At the end of the day, we're still Canadians. We need to do something in order to benefit our lives and our future generations' lives, or we're in trouble. That's just really I like to kind of zip things up like a nice tight sweater.
Yeah.
So people like yourself and what Setsi is doing, we can at least make a nice dent and say, here, next generation, this is what we've done. I hope you're proud of us. Go. Right?
That's right. And that's a
Yeah.
good point as well, is really taking that multi-generational approach and thinking
Yes.
about the future, our kids
Mm.
and our kids' kids, and
That's
what
it.
our actions right now will have an impact for generations. So it's an important mindset to hold.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, I appreciate you so much. On behalf of Setsi, we thank you. We wish you nothing but success, and collaboration is the key to, social change and for the future. So we'll definitely be collaborating more. And so, yeah, everybody just stay tuned. And we thank you again for today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So we will close the way we began by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Mark, thanks again and all the best.
Thank you, Mott. Have a great day.
Okay, you too. Bye bye.
Bye now.